This is going to be the hottest of takes, but we know that they took some of what happened to Indigenous people and used that in Germany. It's been noted by there was a book I was reading, and there was a politician talking about how they managed to accomplish what took the United States so long to do in like 25 years. Like, they had accomplished it so much faster. And then they took that system and they used it in another place. And now these people are using that very same system in that other place. Because unfortunately, when it comes to the United States, when it comes to Canada, they've learned something. And what they've learned is that when you don't completely get rid of the problem, what ends up happening, when I say the problem, right? The problem is human beings. But if you don't eradicate them in the complete entity of them, eventually there will be, one, repercussions, but two, some form of, truth and reconciliation. Now, the worst part about this situation is we're watching it happen in real time. There was a lot of what they did in Canada. Like, there was policies in place that if a population of settlers got so big, right, to a certain size, they would relocate reserves to be further away from settlers. You weren't allowed to go to pool rooms because they didn't want you having leisure time, but they also didn't want you interacting with. Because when you humanize people and people know what's going on, it's more likely that they're not going to be okay with something. A large component of after World War II, a large part of the pushback was people saw the suffering. They saw what was happening. The soldiers witnessed what happened to those people. And not only that, but we had Indigenous soldiers go. There was an Indigenous soldier who went to Europe to fight in World War II and got a meeting with the king. And he sat down with the king and was like, are you aware what is happening in Canada? Right, because the Indian Act came into effect, was created after Canada was technically like its own sovereign nation, its own country. So although I'm not saying that they didn't play a role in it or they weren't responsible for what happened, so the Constitution Act, which made Canada a country in 1867, Section 91(24), the federal government was given authority to make laws about Indigenous and lands reserves, change from a nation-to-nation relationship to one where Indigenous were considered wards of the crown and forced to assimilate. So this was actually World War I. Being stationed together overseas was the first time Indigenous people from different communities across Canada had an opportunity to discuss their living conditions on reserves. They talked about the expropriation of reserve land, the restrictions and hardship they experienced due to government policies, and their treatment at the hands of the federal government representatives. Lieutenant Frederick Loft, a Mohawk from the Six Nations band, while stationed abroad, Loft managed to arrange a meeting with the Privy Council and the King of England to describe the living conditions of Indian people in Canada. When he returned to Canada, Loft wrote the chiefs, inviting them to meetings and asking them to share information with as many others as possible. Basically, Loft arranged, they made this, they were trying to do it annually. They held 3 meetings, and then the Canadian government made it illegal for Indigenous people to form political parties. Which is also why it's such a big deal that like wob canoes in politics. But with what we're currently seeing in regards to this, the difference is right now is we're all watching it happen in real time, and they're realizing, I mean, what has it really stopped? I mean, people are putting pressure on the government everywhere, pressure on businesses by boycotting things. But the reality of the situation is how many people have been lost while we actively watched it happen. And that might embolden governments to continue to do things and make things worse. I mean, even when we look at Afghanistan and what's happening to the women there were so many men, so many women who didn't care because it's not their country. But at the end of the day, when they come for one, they come for all.